As we continue, we welcome into the program the esteemed athletic director of Furman University, Mike Buddie, who this weekend will be in the Bronx for the 20-year reunion of the 1998 New York Yankees World Series championship team. You know, if I had the technology, kind of got a green screen there, I could project the Yankees logo under your shirt.
I'm a walking green screen.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. I didn't know I was esteemed. I feel important.
Well, that's a word I always use for people who sign my paychecks and do those kind of things. So, you know.
Yeah. Hey, as a kid who grew up a Cleveland Indians fan, when I got drafted by the Yankees, they became the esteemed
New York Yankees. That's right. The line of boots licked is long but distinguished. Hey, 20 years, man. Does it seem like it's been that long?
No, it disgusts me, really. I was laughing. We were able to. My family took part in this Feed the Dins deal that Coach Hendricks is bringing back, and we were fortunate enough to get to have Travis Blackshear Jr. and Darius Moorhead over, and phenomenal kids. That's a great experience. I'm so glad I got the chance to do that. But I was talking to Darius, and he was born in 1998, and he was lamenting how old he was because Darius was born in 2000. I'm sorry, that Travis was born in 2000. He was saying, oh, he's so young, he was born in 2000. And I said, well, when you were born? He said 1998. And I said, well, it was actually the year I won the World Series, and it doesn't seem like that long ago. And when you kind of see a full-grown Division I running back that's chiseled in front of you, thinking you were born the year that I was actually, probably at one of the heights of my first career anyway. It's sobering. It doesn't feel like it's been 20 years. Of course, I don't feel like I'm 47 years old either.
Right.
So
you don't have grandchildren yet either. Wait till that pops up on you.
Yeah, I can't wait. Bite your tongue.
Yeah, exactly. Have you gotten to the point in your athletic career yet where, and I think it happens to everyone at some juncture, the older you get, the better you were?
No doubt. I watch our guys battle every day out there playing for Furman. And a pitcher will walk somebody on 4 pitches or, hang an 0-2 breaking ball. And, it's the cardinal sin. And I'm sure I never did it.
Never.
But we both know that I did it thousands of times. But, yeah, you don't remember the unfortunate. Actually, I remember plenty of the unfortunate because there's video evidence sometimes. But, yeah, the further along you get, I'll tell you, the more I appreciate having been a part of this 98 team and even the Brewers teams after, and all of those experiences. I had a conversation with Manny Robinson earlier this week about this reunion. You just kind of quietly realize that I'm doing some things in a leadership role that I learned from watching Joe Torre, which is a cool name drop to do, but there really are just lessons, and they weren't all from people like Joe Torre, but just the experiences that I got, the mentality that you learn being a minor league baseball player. You always have to worry about what's next, what's the little tweak that will make me a little bit better, how can I differentiate myself? And those are the same questions that I ask my leadership team as the athletic director at Furman is, what can we do, little things here and there that will make us better as an organization and differentiate ourselves. So it's never done learning, right?
Yeah, and the cool thing about that is, as that's happening in 1998, you probably didn't even realize that you were soaking that in via osmosis, but now 20 years later, you're actually able to put that into practice.
Yeah, no doubt. It's the age-old, I feel like I'm becoming my dad. So that's the ultimate osmosis. Like if you don't learn some things from your parents, for better or for worse, then you're not paying attention. But yeah, it's evident. Apparently, I was paying attention throughout all that experience.
So how many of the 98 Yankees are coming back? Do you know?
Yeah, they published the list of guys, and it's like close to 30, which, of course, there's only a 25-man roster, but there are a lot of September call-ups and, injuries, guys like me that were up and down, and that included some coaches, too. So, the big talk was that there's 3 guys that aren't coming that have the fan base up in arms. One is Derek Jeter, who obviously is the owner of the Marlins, is plenty busy. He's not going to be able to make it. Joe Girardi, left New York in a hurry, is not going to make it. And then Scott Brocious, who was the MVP of that series in 98, who's actually now the big league third base coach for the Seattle Mariners, he's got a perfectly good excuse that he's going to be busy. But those 3 won't be there. But most of the guys that made up that nucleus, the other 3 of the big 4, Pettit, Posada, and Rivera, will all be there. And Paul O'Neill with our local Furman connection. Looking
Yeah.
forward to catching up with Paul, and it'll be fun. It'll be a whirlwind.
Bernie Williams, who was roaming center field.
That's right.
So
Yep.
it's one of the things that, in looking back and knowing George Steinbrenner's history, when he bought the Yankees and tried to buy a winner with every free agent he could sign, it was just always very interesting to me that at that juncture in the mid-'90s, when he let the baseball people start making baseball decisions and then adding the right free agent like Charlie Hayes, like Scott Brocious, and some of the other guys who would come in and out of the roster. Championship in 96 and then 3 straight from 98 to 2000. It just always kind of, I won't say amazed me, but I found it kind of funny and ironic sort of way that when he said, all right, I mean, I'm sure he was still the boss, but he let his baseball guys make some decisions, and suddenly you draft a Posada, you draft a Jeter, you draft a Bernie Williams, you draft a Mariano Rivera. All of a sudden you got a good nucleus. Yeah,
there's no doubt. I think Jeter was kind of the impetus behind all of that. George was getting to a point in his age where I think he surrounded himself with enough guys that he trusted. Gene Michael probably being the biggest and loudest, and they just kind of convinced him, hey, let's start giving some of our homegrown guys a shot, and those guys you just named are pretty good guys to give a shot. And I think George realized, okay, maybe I know the business aspect best. And then Bob Watson, who was the GM in '96, left to go under a more stress-free work-life balance. And young Brian Cashman came in, who was the GM that called me on that day in April of '98 to say, hey, you need to get on a plane to Seattle. And Brian couldn't have been 36, 37 at that time, and he's still the GM today and weathered through the ending of George, his hands-on and life eventually, and now he's the next generation of Steinbrenners. He's had a nice little career there.
Yeah, Brian Cashman was hired in February of 1998, so basically right as spring training was about to ramp up, he became a very young general manager and has presided over quite the run for the Yankees franchise. The interesting thing about Derek Jeter, do you know how close he came to becoming a Cincinnati Red? The pick before the Yankees took Jeter, the Reds took Chad Mottola.
Yeah. Yep. I didn't know if they were looking for an infielder and they had narrowed it down to those two. And I'll tell you, if you had met, because I know Chad fairly well, faced him for quite a few years, and then, of course, played with Derek. If you would have had them standing side by side in 1992 in June, if there were 100 of us who hadn't scouted, 98 of us are taking Chad Mottola.
Right.
And Chad Mottola was built like a linebacker, could run like a running back, could throw from the outfield, hit for power. Derek Jeter was a wiry little 17-year-old gangly shortstop, and that's the beauty of talented scouts can see through those things. And well, as an Indians fan, I'm glad he wasn't a Red, but probably wasn't real happy he was a Yankee either.
Yeah. What would those talented scouts have said about a young Mike Buddie when that draft was coming around?
Yeah, that's a great question.
That's what you pay me to do.
Yeah, I think that the thing that scouts would have seen in me was when I got to Wake Forest, I was coming off of 4 years at Cleveland St. Ignatius High School, where I was an excellent wrestler, had won 2 state championships, had all kinds of Big Ten offers. I was a really good football player that had some Big Ten offers to play tight end, but actually had fallen in love with baseball at a young age and wanted to pursue that. So, I tell people all the time, don't let your 12-year-old kids stop playing those other sports, because you only have so many throws in your arms. And so I hate seeing these 12-year-old kids play just baseball, because I would have been burned out by the time I was 16. I was the opposite. I knew I didn't want to wrestle. I knew I didn't want to play football. So I think if you saw me pitch as a freshman at Wake Forest, I could throw the crap out of it, but I didn't have great command. I didn't have great feel for my off-speed stuff. Made pretty big leap and bound to my sophomore year. And by my junior year, I was pretty polished. So if I was a scout looking at me, radar gun, 92, 93, had pretty good life on the fastball. But to me, my thought is, well, he's really only been a full-time pitcher for 3 seasons. So relatively healthy, relatively good stuff, some background that would make you think I would be coachable and athletic and be able to learn different grips. And so was probably a safe pick, in the 4th round. You could justify taking a decent sized right-hander with low 90s velocity and hope that you get me on the upslope. And I guess I tricked somebody.
It sounds like you made that jump, and looking back at it, a relatively short period of time from being a thrower to being a pitcher.
Exactly. My freshman year at Wake Forest, I had a pitching coach, and he said, "Let me see your two-seamer." And I said, "What's a two-seamer?" I had never heard of a two-seam fastball in my life. I had only gripped a fastball with the 4 seams, and I remember he said, "Grip it like this," showed me how to grip a two-seamer, also known as a sinker. And I threw 3 in a row, and they were starting right down the middle, and at the last second they would dart down, and the catcher would be doing this and, trying to save his left shin from getting hit. And I apologized, and I said, I'm trying to throw it right down the middle. It just keeps moving. And the coach laughed and said, "That's a good thing." I mean, that's how naive I was, that, I thought you want to throw it straight so that it goes exactly where you're aiming it. I'd never thought of it as, well, that's what a hitter wants to see too. So I was a blank canvas, I think you could say.
This is Mike Buddie, of course, the athletic director here at Furman and a member of the Yankees 1998 World Series championship team. You referenced a moment ago Brian Cashman making that call to you. What was that moment like?
It was special. I was actually at my mother-in-law's house. We had just broken minor league camp in Tampa, Florida, and we were driving from Tampa to Columbus, the AAA affiliate, and we stopped in Winston-Salem to spend the night to break up the trip. I woke up the next morning. My mother-in-law, bless her heart, had kind of knocked gently on the door and said, "I didn't want to wake you up, but a guy named Brian Cashman is calling and trying to get in hold of you." So I jumped out of bed, and it was before cell phones. This was, I had time. Literally, it was like 8:00 in the morning, and they said, "You got a 9:45 flight out of Greensboro." And so I was throwing stuff into a bag, literally. Had time to call my mom and dad, and that was a special phone call. And then you're sprinting, and I was getting on a flight to go out to Seattle, and it's just kind of I'd spent 25 years of my life at that point hoping to get that one moment. And I had actually had a fire drill in 1996. I was in AA, had thrown 3 consecutive really good outings. Andy Pettit was in the big leagues and had a little twinge in his elbow. And so they called me off of the bus in Bowie, Maryland. I flew from Baltimore to Minnesota, and I sat in the bullpen as Pettit was warming up, because if he said, "Yeah, I still feel it," I was going to start that night against the Twins from AA. I'd never been in AAA. And turns out Andy was fine, and I got back on a plane and was back in Bowie, Maryland the next day.
So you were never officially activated?
Was never activated, was never added to the roster. And I remember thinking, if that's as close as I get, it's going to really haunt me forever. And so getting the call in 98 was certainly a relief. And then, I made it to the Seattle Kingdom and got there in the 4th inning, and I was on the mound in the 7th.
Not going to waste that plane ticket,
leagues.
Right?
That's right.
This sounds like kind of a silly question when I ask what made that 98 Yankees team so good, because we just ran through a lot of the big names that were there. But the Yankees had a lot of teams with a lot of big names previously that didn't have anywhere close to the season that you had in 98. So had to be some chemistry involved there. What brought it all together?
Well, the leadership was as good as I've ever seen. It is being able to live in New York and perform on that. It's not for everybody. I've got a PowerPoint that I do about teamwork, and I talk about the chemistry, and really it's knowing your role. And so when I look at that team, our 2 bench players were guys named Chili Davis and Tim Raines. Mm-hmm. Both of them had been in the big leagues for 21 years and 22 years. Both had been all-star starters. But at that point in their career, they were there to be switch hitting guys off the bench, provide leadership, teach guys like Mike Lowell and Derek Jeter and Ricky Leday and all these young kids how to be professionals.
And they wanted a World Series ring.
That's right. And so you get some guys in that position get put on that bench, and they gripe and they pout and they mope. And those guys were there every day showing you what it's like to be a professional. David Cone was not the best pitcher in the American League, but David Cone owned that clubhouse. If I walked in only 45 minutes early, he'd kind of pull me over. And so, hey, make sure you're here, make sure you're doing this. Joe Torre didn't have to ever take me by the side and say, hey, here's what you need to be doing. Don Zimmer didn't have to do it. Mel Stottlemyre didn't know. Mariano Rivera taught you how to behave in the bullpen. David Cohn taught you how to behave. And the great thing about Cohn was when he was young, he made all kinds of mess. He messed up left and right. He was a part of those crazy Mets teams. And, of course, Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry were also on that 98 team. And they had been through the war. So they had learned some things the hard way and were willing to share that with some of us young guys and saying, hey, New York is different. And so you didn't have to get scolded by the management because you were scolded by your peers. And so you knew that from the get-go. Joe Torre was a great communicator. Everybody just kind of knew what their role was. And so, we showed up every day expecting to win, which is a lot of times it's half the battle. Even when we would, I'll never forget one of the spot starts that I got to make was in Oakland. It was the first game of a doubleheader. We were as thin can be, obviously, or I wouldn't have gotten a start. And I gave up 5 runs in the first inning. And Mel came out to the mound and said, hey, I got nothing else. We got to play 17 more innings. So, keep battling. And Paul O'Neill had misplayed a ball in right field, and he was furious at himself. He still talks about it today, like, I should have caught that ball. But so I ended up throwing 5 more innings, scoreless. And Kenny Rogers was pitching for them. He pitched 8 innings, gave up 1 run. So we're going to the bottom of the 9th. I already know that between games, I'm getting sent back to the minor leagues because a AAA guy was in the locker room waiting to get dressed because he was going to start game 2. So we're down 5-1 through 8 innings, and we scored 9 runs. They went to the bullpen. They brought in Billy Taylor, who was their closer. We score 9 runs. Strawberry hits a pinch hit grand slam. We win the game 10-5. I'm off the hook. I don't get the loss. But that was, I was 4-1 that year as a middle relief mop-up guy, which means I would come in when we were down 7-1 in the 3rd inning. But by the time I got out of the game, we were winning 9-8. And that was just the mentality. It was, hey, if Tino Martinez isn't going to get a hit, then Chili Davis is going to get the hit. And if Chili doesn't get it, then Paul's going to get it. And it was, you could see the opposing teams never comfortable with a lead against that team because there wasn't one person that was going to kill you. It was 8 or 9 guys, pick your poison. I mean, Scott Brocious hit 245 on the season maybe. You couldn't get him out in the postseason. Yeah. It was just, you never knew who was going to step up.
Were you awestruck at all the first time you walked into the clubhouse in 90? Or I guess you didn't walk into a pregame clubhouse because, like you said, you got there in the 4th inning. But was there a little bit of that, or were you Mr. Cool?
No, well, I tried to convey Mr. Cool, absolutely, and the difference between 96, the false alarm in 96, I hadn't even been to a big league camp. So I didn't know any of the guys. In 98, I knew the guys. I was the last guy cut at spring training. So there was a comfort level, certainly. But it's still the big leagues, and there's still 28 cameras, and you can't pick your nose because you never know which camera's pointed at you. The big thing for me, Dan, was I had never been to Yankee Stadium. And so my debut was on the road in Seattle. And when we made it back to New York, that for me was kind of the moment of, holy cow, like that's Thurman Munson's locker. I mean, that is the one that kind of, and they do, you don't pick your locker as a Yankee. It is numerical.
Right.
Well, I was number 52 because that was the lowest number that was available. Well, Bernie Williams wore 51. So I'm sitting in a locker next to Bernie Williams, 2 down from Thurman Munson's old locker, which had the plexiglass in front. Nothing had been touched. And that's when it kind of hit you like, holy cow, like I'm actually a New York Yankee. And I got the win that day.
Not
My
bad.
first win, opening day. Yep.
The Yankees do a better job of not just cultivating but maintaining their history, I think, than any professional franchise in all of sports when it comes to Old Timers Day. I'm sure the way that this is going to go off this weekend is going to be phenomenal. But in Nico Medved's first year here at Furman as a basketball coach, remember we played Fordham up in the Bronx, and Paul O'Neill took us on a tour of new Yankee Stadium. And took us down into the training room area, and there's a picture of Babe Ruth weighing in on a scale in 1932 or something like that. And below it was the scale that Babe Ruth weighed in on. Yeah. That picture was in 1930. It's just those little things where they do such a great job of cultivating their history and understanding who they are.
Yeah, they take care of their own. Say a lot of things about Mr. Steinbrenner, but that was one thing that he would do is make sure that the Mickey Rivers of the world always had a place to go. And I didn't fully realize it. I just thought the big leagues was this outer worldly experience when you go to spring training and you're sitting in the bullpen between Ron Guidry and Goose Gossage, and they're just kind of talking to you about mentality and approach and mechanics. I didn't fully grasp it until I went to camp with the Milwaukee Brewers, and you're just kind of there.
Yeah.
And so you realize, not everybody does this. Just the Yankees do it. So you're absolutely right. It's a unique organization.
The Yankees of 1998 spent 135 days in first place, 152 if you count off days. Largest lead was 22, which was accomplished on the last day of the season. And the furthest you trailed that year was 3.5 games, and that was on April the 7th.
Yeah. We started the season 1-3 in Seattle, and they started in Anaheim. I met them in Seattle, and we lost that game that I pitched in Seattle, and David Cohn had a closed door meeting, and because they had won it in '96, they felt like they were the best team in '97, but didn't win it, and basically just said, guys, we're playing way too tight, way too much pressure, and I thought, holy cow, we're 1-3 or 1-4, and we've already had a closed door clubhouse meeting. But yeah, it was a remarkable season. It was, again, I just felt so spoiled. It was every day, we play today, we win today. Mm-hmm. And so, again, it was a great team to be along for the ride with.
Yeah, and just looking at some of the splits, and stats can mean different things. You can make stats mean some things, but when you look at some of these numbers for the team, 52-29 on the road, which is just phenomenal. Extra inning games, you were 9-2. 1-run games, you were 21-10. Had 7 walk-off wins, only 1 walk-off loss that year. So you were winning close games. You were winning late in ball games. Doing all the things that championship caliber teams have to do.
Well, and when you win close games and late in ball games, when you got a guy named Rivera at the end of the
helps,
bullpen,
doesn't it?
It certainly helps. I mean, it was a 7-inning game for the rest of us. We knew, and really, there's 2 guys that don't get a ton of credit, but Jeff Nelson and Mike Stanton, who were kind of the 8th inning guys. Mm-hmm. If it was a righty, Jeff Nelson, who was 6'9" through low 3/4. Yeah. Just scary as heck for right-handed hitters. He'd get the righty out. Mike Stanton would come in and get the lefty out, or even Graham Lloyd, the 6'10" Aussie. So they handled the 8th inning almost 100% successful. And Mariano was just a machine that year. He was a machine his entire career. Who am I kidding? So really, these starters knew that they had to give us 6 good innings, go back out there for the 7th if they got into trouble. They could throw me out there to get 1 out maybe. If I were able to face 6 guys, I could get that 1 out and turn it over to the machine.
What are you most looking forward to on this reunion weekend?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably my kids getting to see, my kids weren't born yet. Yeah. So, they've only known me as the guy who was raising money at Wake Forest, and, their friends come over. My kids aren't that into sports, but they have friends who come over and say, can I see your dad's ring? Those kind of things. And so, them getting to see me that actually I was important at one time. I like catching up with the guys. It's interesting, Dan. I feel so blessed to be where I am today at Furman. If I'd have played 10 years in the big leagues, if I'd have done 3 cycles of steroids like half of those guys in the big leagues did, I'd have $25 million in the bank, and I would have missed out on this opportunity to be living in Greenville and working with amazing people and fantastic kids. So I like going back because a lot of these guys that I played with are just kind of wandering, and so I was so jealous of so many of these guys in 1998, and now I go back and they're just like, well, I play golf twice a day, and I'm on my 3rd marriage, and it makes me kind of feel like, yeah, you got your $25 million, but how blessed am I to actually have all these other things that I look forward to every day. And so, just getting back and getting the opportunity to sit down and feel important again is going to be pretty fun.
Are your kids going to wander in Monument Park looking for your bust?
Probably. That's how well they know. That's how well they know Yankee lore. I'm just hoping they won't wander the wrong part of New York City, because we've got some private events that they're not invited to. So we're just saying, hey, stay in this 5-block radius.
Yeah.
And stay out of trouble. But it'll be fun. New York in the summer is always special, and going back to Yankee Stadium will be great.
This is great. I'm looking forward to hearing from you how it all went, because just knowing how the Yankees do, as I said, Old Timers Day and other things, you just know this is going to be done right, and it's going to be a fantastic event. Before we let you go, just kind of turning some things back quickly to your actual job now here.
Yeah.
How about this run that this story with Harris Roberts is getting as the Furman quarterback, but in a cooperative program, is actually enrolled at Clemson? You were telling me some things I hadn't even heard.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it is a great story, and to me, it illustrates the type of kids that we have representing us, and it's phenomenal. But Hunter Reed and his staff, they're working tirelessly, and I tell our fan base all the time, it's not that we're not providing content to the Greenville News or to Gannett or whoever it may be. We can't determine what they're going to print and what they're going to run, and this is one of those things that I thought, certainly this is a cool story, and with the Clemson angle, and of course us opening with Clemson. I wouldn't have expected it to gone as viral as it's gone, but we're hearing from engineering firms who want to talk to Harris about future opportunities once he's gotten his degree. We're hearing from Sports Illustrated and CBS Sports and Fox Sports. So, to me, it's the epitome of great publicity, because if you read the quotes that Harris has, if you read the quotes from Coach Hendricks about the types of kids that we're trying to bring here, and bring them here as one type of kid, and then send them out the door as a grown up ready to take on the world. Harris is he's the poster child for successful, true student athlete. So I'm thrilled for him, and hopefully it'll culminate in a nice little Saturday down the road in Clemson, and we're looking forward to kicking that off.
Yeah, and of course everybody is focused on that one, and as Clay and I were talking the other day, the next game is actually the more important game, because it gets back into our division and will count towards a possible playoff run again. But this story with Harris Roberts has been just phenomenal to watch. It's been great publicity you can't buy for a school our size. Just very quickly as we wrap it up, I know that we've seen such really, really good inroads and fundraising here. And boy, if anybody out there, whether it's a corporate partnership or anything, this is the primo time to be latching on to what's going on here at Furman University. If you look at the upward track of the athletic program here and all the improvements that are happening on campus, the video boards going in at Timmons, and just the performance on the field, the caliber of kids, this is a great time for people to be really interested in what we're doing here.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I feel like we're mirroring our community. So, Greenville as a community is becoming the place to be for retirees, for young up-and-comers. It's kind of the hot spot of the country, and Elizabeth Davis has put her stamp on Furman as a university, and that's on a trend up. And so we're trying to keep pace with all of it. Really excited. You mentioned the video boards in Timmons. That's going to be a phenomenal addition to that. And Coach Ritchie just has that program, in a great direction. Coach Carson right there too. And so it's been fun. We all thought we'd be lucky to win 5 or 6 games last year with Coach Hendricks in his first year. You just never know what to expect. And he's just blown the doors off the place. And so you're absolutely right. We're a stock that you could buy right now for low and feel like it's a pretty good investment.
I laughed, and we talked about it during some of the broadcasts last year, how expectations for fans and maybe even people on this campus can turn on the proverbial dime. We go 0-3 out of the gate in football last year, and the expectations are, like you said, man, if we could just somehow get to 4 or 5, maybe 6 wins, that'd be phenomenal. Then you go and win your next, as it turned out, 7 games in a row. But by the time we had won about 5 in a row, and we're sitting at 5-3, all of a sudden the expectations are now, if Furman doesn't make the playoffs, it's a disappointment.
Yeah,
it turned just like that, didn't it?
Welcome to college athletics. You wonder why these coaches get paid the way they do at the highest level. Well, with expectations comes results. And so, we got spoiled with Coach Hendricks, and I'll tell you, you get to be around him. And I wish all of our fans could be around not just Clay, but the guys that he has surrounded himself with. Their rapport with each other and how they interact with our students, they're having so much fun. And practicing in 96-degree weather is not normally fun, but They keep it light. They're very economical. They don't believe in if it's a 2-hour practice, but they get everything done that they want to get done in 94 minutes. They're done in 94 minutes. And so the kids appreciate it. They're focused when they're out there. They're attentive. And I'm so excited, not just for this year, but the way these guys have been recruiting and the types of kids that are committing to Furman with some other offers that they've got. It's very, very encouraging.
Well, we'll hope that that continues to be an upward track for this entire university. And it's just been fun to have the seat that I have to kind of watch it all transpire here as I get set for my 8th year behind the mic as the voice of the Paladins. To see where this athletic program has come through those first 7 years has been phenomenal.
Well, I'm just trying to stay out of people's way and enjoying the ride myself. I wish I had the view that you have, Dan. I know we talk about it all the time, but thrilled to have you here and thrilled to be a part of this.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
All right, boss.
All right, that is Mike Buddie. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more on the Dan Scott Show right after this.